Some quick announcements before I start. I now have my very own German Peter Discord server. You can talk to people there, make friends, look at memes and cute animals, and even post your very own artwork and videos. And not only that, but you can even discuss and give feedback on my videos. I always try to read YouTube comments, but direct feedback like that is way more useful. And if this kind of map/game mode analysis video interests you, then I advise you to take a look at my videos The Timeless Perfection of Upward and a flawed masterpiece called Two Fort, in which I talk about why these maps are so beloved. If you are interested, the links for the server and the videos are in the description and in the comments. Now onto the video! There has been this discussion going around that 5CP and CTF are really flawed game modes, which has completely eluded me. CTF, I can understand that, there's definitely some problems there, especially with maps like Two Fort. But 5CP? I thought it was always a pretty alright game mode. Yet after digging a little deeper and looking at the topic a bit closer, I can definitely see where people are coming from. But at the same time, I thought to myself, really? These are the issues? But they add to the charm. Because, as I'm going to explain later, I'm going to be on the opposite side of the debate and argue in favor of 5CP and CTF. So basically, I just want to elaborate on the different issues that people have with those two game modes, and then I'm going to blow your mind by turning them around and explaining how they're actually a good thing. Now I'm going to be discussing both 5CP and CTF together, even though their playstyles are drastically different. However, they have a lot of the same issues which other symmetrical game modes like Payload Race or Special Delivery don't have. I'm also going to be talking about CTF a bit less, because the focus of this video is mostly on 5CP. I suppose my arguments could also apply to Pastime and Manpower, though I won't be addressing them directly, because I haven't played either of them very much and because Manpower also has power-up runes which affect the gameplay drastically. So let me start by outlining the different problems of 5CP and CTF. Oh, and brace yourself, because you're gonna hear 5CP and CTF a lot in this video. Like, a lot. Here we go! To summarize the issues of both game modes, I'm going to quote two videos by Uncle Dane, specifically Capture the Flag is the worst game mode in TF2 and Rank 18 competitive mode in review. These do not fully capture the opinions of the entire community, but they do outline the main issues. So what are the issues? Well, first of all, Dane explained that 5CP maps are simply too big for their own good, with a lot of designs favoring defending rather than attacking.
5CP is a flawed game mode and not an ideal way to play competitive. The maps are just way too long, the choke points are way too stalematey, and the last point is always way too close to the spawn room, which gives the defending team a huge advantage.
While he was addressing 5CP with this, I feel it also applies to CTF. The maps may not be as big in size, they do still suffer from the same problems of chokes and the last being too close to spawn, however. The only real exceptions to this seem to be Two Fort and Sawmill, where the intel room is an entirely different building. Both intel rooms are still pretty difficult to attack, however, due to the entrances being too narrow, with a lot of room for sentries. The second major problem, according to Uncle Dane, is that 5CP encourages very unhealthy class behavior.
TF2, believe it or not, has 9 classes, and Valve would understandably want to show that off to the competitive gaming scene, but 5CP as a game mode encourages the generalist classes like Scout and Soldier to be run 99% of the time. If you're running high mobility, high damaging classes like Soldier, Scout, and Demoman, you're going to be able to switch between attacking and defending instantly, so that's why the 6v6 meta has settled where it has, because of the 5CP game mode encouraging those classes to be run almost full time.
You can kind of see this in CTF maps too, with engineers being way too overpowered due to their sentries shutting down the objective. He addresses this in his Capture the Flag video, in which he talks about how new players are essentially taught to turtle.
Capture the Flag maps encourage the most linear class in the game to be even more linear. Yeah, when you're playing CTF NG, you always gotta defend that intelligence, better build in the intel room like always. This game is really fun! It's not a coincidence that new players who play a sniper and engineer always look the derpiest, because most of the time you see them playing on a map with an objective that punishes them for staying in one place. They just straight up get killed every time, and they don't know why. It's because they're conditioned by CTF maps to turtle and repeatedly do the same thing every time.
I could talk about that line in great detail, and while I don't exactly agree with it, I have to agree that CTF maps greatly favor this linear way of playing the game. Turtling in the intel room is just too good because it's fast, easy and effective. However, let's move on to the last big issue, which is about time limits and stalemates.
Now, I'm of the opinion that you need a time limit in this game because there's defense classes, offense classes, generalist classes, and they all get in the same room and fight, and you're gonna have a few stalemates. And while both teams are sitting on the opposite sides of a choke point, and then they realize there's no time limit, I could just stand here all day. I don't have to make a move, you make a move, you go, no you go, no you. That's just not fun anymore, and this is simultaneously why 5CP is a flawed game mode as well. The time limit after a point is capped is set to just under 10 minutes. There's no urgency in that.
This is pretty interesting because while, as I said, CTF maps encourage this type of I don't have to move, you do mindset, 5CP on the other hand tries to avoid this by having designs built into them to prevent stalemates. An example of this is that the majority, if not all but the main spawns, do not have any resupply cabinets in them and are very small in general. You have to keep going. You can't just stand and spawn and build a new defense there, you gotta immediately go for the next point, because that's where the ammo and health is. There's other ones too, like each succeeding capture point being easier to cap than the last. However, it seems that these just don't work, or at least not in the ways that they should. So it appears that stalemates are an inherent issue with these maps, and I fully agree with Dane on that. But here's the thing with these problems. Uncle Dane is a competitive TF2 player. I don't mean that he plays TF2 competitively, he may do that, I don't really know much about it, nor do I really care. Instead, I mean that when he plays TF2, he plays to win, with a good team that also plays to win. I, however, am a casual TF2 player. I don't care much for competitive, I think it's neat, just kinda boring to play and watch. And in extension, my videos usually concern themselves with the casual side of TF2. And I mean casual as in playing casually and not as in playing casual, though those two basically mean the same thing. Are you confused yet? My point is that these issues that Uncle Dane described are ones that affect the competitive side of TF2, which you would kind of guess from one of the titles being competitive mode and review. Casual TF2, however, is played entirely different from comp TF2. No class limits, 24 players, no weapon bans, etc. And in return, not only do these problems not affect the game in the same ways, but I also argue that they benefit the game if it's played casually. Bold claim, I know, but now I will elaborate by going through each single problem and explaining how they're actually not as bad as you may think, and then I'm going to blow your mind by explaining how they're actually positive. First up, the maps being too big. For CTF, this already doesn't apply with the exception of perhaps CTF Well. Yet for 5CP, this benefits the maps in the way that there's room. You can actually go places. This is something that King of the Hill and Payload Race do very well, and that there are 100 of different passageways and tunnels and trails you can take. You can completely wrap around the entire map and never even look at the objective. That's the benefit of symmetrical maps, because in linear ones like attack and defense or payload, there's always a goal you're working towards. With 5CP, however, not only does that goal keep changing positions, but you also get a ton of different ways to work towards it. Even a static goal like the intelligence can be all over the map, and because the reset timer is so long, it sort of creates a control point that one team has to defend and the other one attack. It's dynamic. You still have to go through certain chokes, that much is true. However, due to the dynamic nature of both game modes, you still have to switch up your strategies. Oh, you took too long to capture the fourth point? Well, too bad, now you gotta recapture it and also move all of your buildings again. One of my favorite ways to play 5CP and even payload is to run behind the enemy spawn as scout with a phase blaster and just distract them. Not even capture anything, just play tag with the enemy team. And due to the giant size of these maps, that is actually possible and super fun. On to the next issue of generalist classes being favored over others. This is almost entirely a competitive problem. It doesn't apply to pubs at all, or at least not with the same weight. And that is because people in casual do not care about what class they should be playing as. They all just play as whatever they want.
You know what this team could use? 5 more snipers.
That's both a good and a bad thing, but in this scenario it's actually beneficial. Because even if generalist classes may be overall more useful on 5CP, you're never really going to see that meta more than on any other game modes. At least that's what it seems like to me. I never join a 5CP match and think to myself, well, off to fight a billion soldiers, scouts and demos. The only class you're gonna see a lot is Engineer, especially on CTF. Well, and Snipers. And this leads to an even bigger problem, and that problem is what the sniper calls a beer that's been out in the open for an hour. Stalemate. To quote Dane again,
because of the virtual absence of a time limit in 5CP, this can potentially last for 10 minutes, which isn't fun to play or watch.
Ahaha! But that's where you're wrong, Danish pastry. This is actually really fun to play. I'm anticipating a lot of you questioning my sanity right now, with some of you even dialing the number of a local mental institution to send someone in white to take me away in a straitjacket, but do hear me out. What are the main things that TF2 players have been lamenting since the introduction of matchmaking? Team imbalance and games ending too quickly. But what if I told you that 5CP and CTF actually compensate these issues? To visualize this, a standard 5CP match starts out with one team stomping the other one into the dirt and winning the first round very easily, like all games lately. For the second round, the stomped team then realizes what just happened, or enough people joined, so they start building up a defense and fight back. The team that previously won now hits a roadblock and is instead slowly pushed back, because they were playing too aggressively before. Then the roles are reversed, with the former stomped team now being the one that's doing the stomping until it too reaches the defense of the other team. This cycle then continues until either team wins, or more realistically, until eternity. I have a theory for why this might happen, but it's not based on any evidence, it's just my speculation. I suspect that dedicated players that actually want to finish and win the game stay, while ones that aren't good enough or get bored / frustrated end up leaving. Meanwhile, more and more people join until eventually it's mostly dedicated players and either team wins. Teams then end up being so balanced that the only way for them to get imbalanced is for old players to leave and new ones to join. Since Meet Your Match released its very broken matchmaking, this was one of the most fun ways for me to enjoy the game. In other game modes, matches end quickly, too quickly even, which coincidentally is what women say to me all the time as well. I'm kidding, I never even get that far. But to get back on topic, this happens due to really uneven teams, because either not enough people joined, or because all the good players are on one side, or both. The fact that auto balance and team scramble are non-existent anymore makes this even worse. Yet with 5CP and CTF, rounds can almost never end, and you can play for hours upon hours. So eventually you will end up with competent people. And that's great, because that was what TF2 was like for me before Meet Your Match. Games could last forever, because even after a map change, people would stick around. Sadly, that is not entirely the case anymore, but at least those two game modes keep it alive. Yet, I feel like I have to point out that CTF matches can and do still end very quickly, because if the other team doesn't react fast enough, a scout can run in and out of the base 3 times, catching the intel as he does. In those cases, you gotta be really fast to set up a defense, after which it turns into the same never-ending stalemate as usual. I once had a match on fast lane, and this was like a year ago because that's how long the script has been floating around, that went on for almost an hour. Not the entire game, no, just one round. I left after this one round and I had 178 points. The enemy team had carried 4 out of 5 points for about a quarter of the time, and they kept pushing for less, but we always pushed them back and recaptured the second point. And this went back and forth like that until we finally won, because too many people from the enemy team left and we were finally able to push. This actually reminds me of the, sadly now dead, Super Monday Night Combat, a game that I really loved and which, with enough love and care, could have easily been my favorite game next to TF2 actually. Super Monday Night Combat was a MOBA with 5 to 6 players on each team where you were trying to destroy the enemy money ball. Rounds could last for hours and would only be won because players left their teams. It was always really frustrating when that happened, but the long rounds were still a lot of fun. I miss that game so much, why did it have to die? That aside, matches also last incredibly long on the recently-ish added Powerhouse. How long ago was it again? Almost 3 years, what? They can either last 2 minutes or 2 hours, but nothing in between. Actually, can I go off topic for a while? I really love Powerhouse, it's one of my favorite maps. If you didn't know, it was originally supposed to come out with TF2 in 2007. But it was never finished because the guy that worked on it left and only finished it around Gunmetal. If the map had released with TF2 back then, I think I would have played barely anything else. I really want to talk about that map in great detail one day, but for now, I will just say that it is incredibly well designed, both from an artistic and from a gameplay perspective, for the exact same reasons that I described in this video. But to get back on topic, let me just get to the conclusion. I know that CTF and 5CP aren't perfect game modes. However, I feel that many of the flaws mostly only apply to the competitive side. Stalemates and not being able to finish the game in a reasonable amount of time isn't exactly fun perhaps, especially for spectators or players or comp TF2. You're just faffing around doing whatever you like. But isn't this what we all want sometimes? To just mess around for hours and eventually leave when it gets too much? I mean, that's one of the reasons why 2-Fort is so popular, or why Hightower has an unspoken no capping rule, which is also pretty annoying though. A lot of people don't really care for their team nor the objective, they just want to play a bit of deathmatch. And that is perfectly fine. However, while CTF and 5CP deliver in that regard, they also give players that do want to try harder the chance to do so. And when they do, it can be insanely gratifying. Trying your absolute hardest in a match and eventually succeeding is one of the best feelings you can have in this game, or in any game in fact. Granted, having the enemy team overwhelm you after all your progress, recapture all the points and eventually even win is one of the worst feelings, but it sorta evens itself out. When you win, you're the king of the world. When you lose, it's the end of the world. It's a glass cannon basically. The bottom line is that while this long-winded back and forth where no one actually gets anywhere is awful for competitive, where the goal is winning, it's amazing for casual, where the goal is having fun. I know that a lot of people still probably don't like the long time limits, and I suspect that Valve might actually do something about that, considering they're trying to make competitive more fun overall. At the same time, however, I kind of wish that they never changed this, because it can be a lot of fun. Valve even once said that while they don't exactly understand things like friendlies, they still don't want to destroy how people have fun. So I'm hoping that they're instead going to push other game modes in co-op, such as Payload, where the time limit isn't as big of an issue, and where things like Stopwatch exist. Or they'll at least find a compromise that makes 5CP and perhaps even CTF better and competitive, while still maintaining the fun nature of them in casual. However, I am willing to admit that this opinion is pretty weird and maybe even controversial. So I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you think 5CP and CTF are unfun because of stalemates, or do they actually make the game more enjoyable? What I would also love to hear is what competitive players think about this, and what ideas they have for making the two game modes more accessible in both high and low skill plays. I think I've said everything I wanted to say though, but before I end my video, let me just thank all of my patrons. Alexis Chavez, Clayta Yanero, Lasse Soybjörg, Ren Marty, Storrent, Zachary Leclerc, and as always, Xenomite. Thank you for all of your support, I really do appreciate it. And if you want to become a patron too, that would be also great, but you don't have to. Just watching my videos and perhaps even subscribing is enough already. Or you can join my German Peter Discord server, link down below, shameless plug. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, have a wonderful day and goodbye.